The retraining of Seattle's police department was sparked by this fatal police-involved shooting in 2010. John T. Williams, a Native American woodcarver seen in this patrol car video crossing the street, was ordered to drop a knife he was carrying for his craft. Police officer Ian Burke gave Williams, who was hard of hearing, just 4 seconds warning before opening fire.
Put the knife down.
It was the 8th fatal police-involved shooting by Seattle police in 5 years, and the 25th in a decade. Burke resigned from the force, but was not prosecuted. The U.S. Justice Department launched an investigation. It found that Seattle police had engaged in a pattern or practice of using unnecessary or excessive force and raised serious concerns about biased policing. In 2012, the city of Seattle settled the probe with a consent decree, agreeing to court-monitored reforms to minimize use-of-force incidents, not only with guns, but with tasers and batons.
2 King 11 arrived.
For the past 5 years, Seattle police officers have retrained how to approach someone in crisis or showing signs of mental illness. In this scenario, they're trying to stop a man from running through traffic.
Sir, Officer Stevens, Seattle Police Department. What's your name?
At times, it sounds more like a psychology class.
This is just too much.
Hey, brother, it sounds like you're incredibly overwhelmed. I think job loss is tough for all of us.
The goal here is to de-escalate the situation.
You got to analyze it from both sides.
Trainer Andrew Marvel says slowing things down reduces the chances of a violent encounter.
If we have situations that potentially could go bad and could potentially result in some type of lethal force being used, if our officers can recognize that ahead of time, those situations, use good tactics, use good verbal skills, and incorporate some teamwork in there, we end up reducing those situations.
All Seattle police officers are required to take this 4-hour crisis intervention training once a year. That's on top of an 8-hour course now mandated for all rookie officers in Washington state. Some Seattle officers volunteer for an extra 40-hour course to join special crisis intervention teams dispatched in these types of situations.
You guys don't even know what's going on.
I'll feel more comfortable if we can talk without you holding the knife, because it is a little scary.
Here we typically display information about units that are on patrol, what's happening.
The Seattle Police Department's Chief Operating Officer, Brian Maxey, says better data collection about police encounters shows the training is working.
What we're finding out is that with the 10,000 contacts we have with people in severe crisis every year, officers are only using force 1.6% of the time. That is remarkably low because this is the most volatile population that officers engage with. Of that 1.6%, only about half of that is any kind of serious use of force.
This April, the court-appointed monitor overseeing Seattle's consent decree found a 60% reduction in use of force by police between 2014 and 2016. Just a week before that report, Attorney General Jeff Sessions ordered a review of all Obama administration consent decrees, which he says vilify police and reduce their morale.
For Seattle, Sessions' threat is an empty threat.
Seattle's Democratic Mayor, Ed Murray, says federal oversight has been essential.
The idea that the Justice Department would step back from being a basically honest broker between communities of color and police departments in cities has the potential to be explosive. This is a role that they've played since the 1960s. And I think that our police department today is a better police department because the Justice Department came in, because the federal monitor was appointed.
So if other commissioners could come tomorrow morning.
Seattle's consent decree also created a community police commission to advise the court on progress implementing reforms. The trust Seattle police have been trying to build was shaken last month by the death of Charlena Lyles. According to her family, the 30-year-old black single mother had a history of mental health issues. On Sunday morning, June 18th, Lyles called 911 to report a burglary. When 2 white Seattle police officers arrived at her apartment, the conversation at first was calm, as you can hear in this police recording.
Someone broke into my house and took my things.
The situation deteriorated rapidly when Lyles allegedly brandished 2 kitchen knives.
Hey! I don't know how to taser. We need help. Hey, get back! Get back!
With 3 of her 4 children in the next room, Both officers fired their guns, hitting Lyles 7 times. The police department says neither had a taser, but they were carrying either a baton or pepper spray, and both had undergone crisis intervention training.
Charlena! Charlena!
Though the investigation into Lyles' death has just begun, the outrage has been immediate.
Are we willing to stand up, one and united, to pressure this city to change its behavior in policing?
For community activist Andre Taylor, this protest was all too familiar. Last year, Seattle police shot and killed his brother Shay, whom they had suspected of illegally possessing a firearm. Police dashcam video shows 3 white officers approaching his vehicle. Shay was facing the open passenger door. The officers ordered him to put his hands up. Then they shot him.
Hands up! Shots fired, shots fired.
18 months later, the shock of the incident has not lessened for Andre Taylor as he showed us around the South Seattle neighborhood where he grew up.
It wasn't even a matter of seconds before they killed him. It was devastating as some of the other shootings I've seen.
Taylor says despite reforms, distrust of police remains endemic in the city's African American community. He introduced us to a group gathered at a community center, commiserating over their interactions with police. 17-year-old Jahila Moody says she often gets stopped by the police.
You don't even have to have any type of altercation with the police. You could just be walking down the street and they'll pull up on you and they'll be like, what are you doing? A lot of the time, police feel threatened by us because they are scared, not because we are scared.
Taylor says another frustration is the leniency the law affords police officers involved in fatal shootings, like his brothers. Dan Satterberg is the prosecuting attorney who decided not to file charges against those officers. That's because police who reasonably believe their lives are in danger cannot be convicted. That's the legal standard across the country. But in Washington state, prosecutors must also prove an officer showed malice.
Malice is not a word we use a lot in conversation, but it means an evil intent, a dark heart. When you look at that tape, that videotape, when you talk to the officers, look in the investigation, certainly questions arise. Could they have done something different? Could they have made a decision strategically, tactically to intercept Mr. Taylor somewhere other than right at the door of the car? And I think that was originally their plan to do so. And then when he didn't walk away from the car, they felt like they were already committed. So was this perfect? No. Could it have been done better? Yes. Is there malice? There's no malice in there.
It turned out Shay Taylor was not holding a gun, though police say they later found this .45 caliber pistol under the vehicle's passenger seat.
It's hard to imagine a set of facts that would meet the malice standard. You'd almost have to have a personal animosity between the officer and the civilian that pre-existed the moment. But even then, we still have to prove that self-defense was not a motivating factor and that the officer lacked all good faith to believe that the force was necessary.
A Seattle Times investigation found of 213 police-involved killings in Washington state between 2005 and 2015, not one officer has been convicted of wrongdoing. Seattle Police Crisis Intervention trainer Andrew Marvel says the high legal standard is justified.
Officers do have a higher threshold for prosecution than the average citizen, and that's because we have officers being asked to make very difficult decisions in a very short amount of time. Nobody wins if we get it wrong. So that's why we train as much as we do, and that's why we get the level of protection that we do.
Andre Taylor is now leading an effort to pass a ballot initiative next year called De-Escalate Washington. It would amend state law to remove the malice threshold when trying to hold officers accountable if they kill a citizen in the line of duty.
We demand that as each and every person has a job and has somebody to look to or be accountable to, that officers must also have somebody to be accountable to. In 30 years in this state, they haven't been accountable to nobody. That's a problem.